call the meeting to order at 6:01. Thank you, Debbie. Approval of the minutes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
as presented.
We have a motion to approve the minutes as written, and it's been seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. I'd like to. Appearance of interested citizens. Are you an interested citizen today?
I'm gonna listen in, and next month I'll be sitting up there as part of the Parks Advisory Board.
Awesome.
Yeah.
New old business, community stakeholder group.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to take a brief moment to congratulate you and Clint on continuing on with the Parks Board and welcome Wayne next month. Pretty exciting. Best wishes to Donna. She's convalescing and getting better, and nice to see you again, Scott. I missed you around here. And then Joe, I think you're taking off as well, right?
I haven't made my official notice yet. So,
Okay, as I was.
Can't decide.
Okay, so not a lot of traction in terms of progress for the parks prioritization. One of the things that we talked about at the last meeting was Robert and I kind of brainstormed a little bit and came up with a list of about 6 or 7 projects over the next 24 months that staff could identify for funding and pretty much barring any major catastrophe, assure us that they can have done in the next 24 months. The Meadows Playground, and I'll let Robert talk a little bit about that, is going to cost about $200,000 with the new structures plus the appropriate fall protection surface. Replacing the sports court out at Claggett is going to be roughly about $100,000 with the parking lot adjustment resurfaced for about $30,000. Northview sports courts about $50,000. Bob Newton repair of the sports courts about $10,000. Chalmers Jones roof about $10,000 on that, and then all the pathways throughout the system about $150,000. So realistically speaking, over the next 2 years, just the planned projects is going to be somewhere in the ballpark of $550,000 to $600,000. So that'll take up a good chunk of the revenue. I know that the council at their last meeting approved the, I'm going to call it supplementary budget, but that may not be the right term for it. But the budget's going to account for a little over $400,000 for this first fiscal year. That's prorated for when they began collecting it till when the actual fiscal year concludes. Staff is moving forward with the recruitment. I think that actually closed on November 22nd, if I remember right. And so that's good. They're in the works of talking about the vehicles and the equipment, and so everything's kind of rolling forward. So the next steps really is going to be to take this information, these 6 or 7 projects, back out to the Citizen Advisory Group, or excuse me, the I'm changing nomenclature here, the Parks Prioritization Group, so that we can have a discussion about this, talk about the various conditions of the asset conditions. Almost all of this is in a 5, meaning it's the worst condition you can imagine, and then be able to take this to City Council. Probably not the first meeting in January, but for sure the second meeting. In the second meeting, it may actually be the better of the 2 meetings, so that way it has an opportunity to come back to the Parks Board, take additional public comment on it, and then confirm the list and send it to the City Council. The goal really is to make sure that we've got a good set of deliverables for the first year, which is going to be a little bit tough because most of it's going to be stuff that happens a little bit behind the scenes, but then for sure the next year, making sure that we have good, solid plans for projects. And then kind of projecting forward into that 36-month arena, begin to, in 2018, start to look at the entirety of the system and figure out what we can do to possibly go for an Oregon Parks and Recreation repair and restoration grant for 2019. So that's a grant that could be applied for up to $750,000. So realistically speaking, we could have about $1.5 million worth of projects for 19. So, and that's, you know, best case scenario, we get everything we want. So with that being said, the next step would be to schedule the next meeting of the Parks Prioritization Work Group. I don't have any specific dates. It's going to be kind of tough to do in December since most folks are traveling or otherwise engaged in life. So it might be better to do first part of January. I'm going to look at some dates. I'll throw it out to this group and also the Parks Prioritization Group and see if we can get something nailed down. Again, with the hope to bring a list back for the Parks Board meeting in January and then ultimately City Council towards the end of the month. So that's where we're at. Like I said, I'll let Robert talk about the Meadows thing when he's ready. You want to do it now or during your update? Up to you.
During my update.
Okay. So that's it. Yeah, about 550,000 to 600,000 over the next 24 months, and then possibly have the opportunity to roll some of that money forward should the city be successful in getting the matching grant from the state. So good things.
So that 400,000 you were talking about, is that the 2% plus the fee, or is that just the fee?
No, that's just no, that's just the fee. I think they discussed. So the 336,000 of the original general fund money is already there. It's already been encumbered for this for parks. Maybe not encumbered is the right word. Anyways, it's already been spent for parks. But the 400 and some change is the new projected revenues from the parks fee. So this year it would wash out to be probably just over $700,000 total for parks fee money. What's that?
Our total budget, is that what you're saying?
Between general, between what was status quo, the 336,000 plus the new revenues.
Thank you, Matt. Any questions for Matt? All right.
Cool. Well, I will get emails out and we'll get that scheduled. Like I said, probably, maybe not the first week in January. It probably need to be the first week in January or last week in December if possible.
I just need those numbers from you to report to council Monday.
Okay.
All right.
Well, would that be a little premature since we? No, I guess they're fine. Yeah, never mind.
They
Okay.
should already pretty much know about that anyway, shouldn't they?
Which is that?
Well, the budget, is that what you're talking about, the 400,000 from the,
Yeah, those two big projects that we're
oh,
looking to do.
Okay.
So.
Well-
Is that all right, Robert, to report that?
Yeah, just the main project that we're looking to do this fiscal year is the Meadows Playground.
Right.
So that's probably the main one you'd want to report on.
Okay, and
Plan on
that's
starting.
400,000?
No, 200.
200?
Yeah.
Okay.
okay. Any new business?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We received, you and I, via email from Richard Walsh, a couple opportunities for grants. There's two. One of them is the Safe Routes to School program. They've got a total of $300,000 available per year for non-infrastructure grants. The cycle for the 2018 opens in October and closes in September of 2018. There's multiple steps. There's like $50,000 maximum over a period of years. There's a lot of information here that I didn't really have too much time to research, but there's one. This is one that's coming out. Again, there's only $300,000, but the other grant is the Recreation Trail Program Grant Cycle, and this is through the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. This grant cycle opens in April. It's a federally funded grant, and they'll have about $1.6 million in total revenue for this grant. The idea here is to do new trail construction, major trail rehabilitation, or restoration of current trailhead facilities. The idea for the use or discussion on both of these grants would be to, as I understand Mr. Walsh's email, purchase and complete the access from Northridge Park to Claggett Creek Park. To be honest with you, like I said, I haven't done a tremendous amount of research on it. I know that there's some challenges that present themselves with that potential project. It would be kind of a big task, I would imagine, to try to undertake this. The one grant with the schools thing, honestly, I don't even know what the timeline is in terms of when you have to have those submitted. It looks like the cycle again for fiscal year 18 is October 2017 to September 2018. So I don't know if they have a competitive process each month for that. But that's through the Oregon Department of Transportation. But again, it's one of those projects that I think folks have talked about over time. I know in the Parks Prioritization Work Group, we had a couple folks come in and give testimony about wanting more access to Northridge and completing that as a accessible park. So in good faith to Mr. Walsh, I told him I would present this to the board and see what folks think about it, and if we want to have a discussion on it or do some more research and table it until January, we can do that. Frankly, I don't have the time right now to do any more research on a grant. I'm working on a bunch of other stuff right now, so if somebody wants to do that, then great. But I wanted to make sure that we talked about it and had a serious discussion on it.
Is there any discussion on the topic?
Let's table that until January. Talk about it again.
All right.
Maybe we could get Mr. Walsh to come.
Okay. We'll invite Mr.
So
Walsh.
prepare for a long meeting.
Well, he better bring snacks then.
Well, and if there's, Mr. Chair, if I may, if somebody on the board wants to take it up and do the research on it, like I said, I frankly don't have the time right now. I mean, if nobody else is willing to do it, I'll make the time, but I would just, I just,
Why don't we have Richard come and talk to us? I think we can probably learn a lot from him if he knows anything about it. And then we can decide if we want to move forward on it.
well,
The trail one I'm a little skeptical of because I would think that would be a little bit more of, I know we could do stuff at Keizer Rapids, but I think they're looking more, bigger, trailheads, things like that for major hiking type things, but maybe not. So maybe we can find out from Richard. I'll call him and ask him if he'll come.
Okay.
and then you want to bring up the other thing?
No, why not? So the city council has thrown back to us our suggestion on designated smoking areas. I guess they want some more refinement on that. Not exactly sure what they want, but that's what they
I
want.
do.
You do. Well then, why did you tell us?
Talking to two of them anyway.
Okay?
I think the easiest way to go is parking lot.
So they want us to recommend designated areas for each park or just in general?
Just in parking areas in each park.
Can you
Okay, so there are some parks that have no parking lot.
Well, then you're out of luck.
Okay.
That is not going to resolve the only reason we started talking about it. I just want to put that out there.
Especially at Sunset Park, because they'll just go out on the road and smoke right next to his house anyway.
Yeah.
Well, which they can do now,
Which they can do
Which,
now.
yeah.
So that's
which they
not
could
gonna
do
solve-
anyway. It's
That's
public.
public right away.
That's
Yeah.
public right away, and it's not gonna solve his problem.
Well, you know, a lot of times when you pass ordinances or rules or whatever, you satisfy nobody and you go halfway, and this is about a halfway. It solves the fire problem,
Yes, it does.
and that's a big concern. And if you're out in the park, you're not gonna be subjected to it. That's my suggestion, just, that's the simplest way is to do it only in, well, paved parking lot. How's that? Now, if you were to go down to Bob Newton Park, I believe that alleyway is like a street, isn't it, Robert? So there's not much we could do about somebody smoking there.
It's not paved.
Doesn't make any difference, I still think it's like a street right away.
I think
Okay,
it's a
sure.
dedicated right away.
So if you did paved parking areas, you're gonna solve 80% of the problems. My suggestion. In fact, I move that we send that to council.
Is there a second for his motion? Motion dies for lack of a second.
Cowards.
Let's be civil now, Jim. Any further discussion on the topic?
Well, each park's a little different. And I guess the thing that bothers me, like, for instance, let's take Keizer Rapids Park. That thing is a lightning rod for guys smoking in there. We've had, I think just this last year, 2 fires. The grass is real dangerous. The trees are real dangerous. And we had 2 fires out there. One was a pretty good sized fire that we had. So, but each park, for different reasons, I think we have to look at. Can you say one park you can't do smoking, all the rest you can? I don't know. But each park is a little different.
But even Keizer Rapids today, when I was walking my dog there today, there was somebody smoking in the parking lot. If I'm playing volleyball, the dog park parking lot, if I'm playing volleyball and let's say there's 3 people sitting around having a cigarette, it interferes with their volleyball game. So, I'm not for banning smoking in the parks. I've made that very clear. But even, I think, having a blanket statement, I don't think is the best way to go. It may, although it might be more difficult to do so, if we're going to have designated smoking areas at parks, we probably should do, in general, each park one at a time. Because if you, literally, if you designate the dog park parking lot to be smoking, it interferes with the 4 volleyball players I saw there today. I know that's offensive when you're, and again, I'm not against smoking in any place in the park. So to me, the fire hazard's a different issue. So.
I think that it should be an all or nothing. Either we ban it altogether, or we don't ban it.
Well, that's what I wanted
I-
in the first place.
I know. I think that the designated thing is lame, to be honest. I just don't think that it's very, effective of a solution. And I generally think it's a bad idea to ban smoking. But if we're going to do it at all, let's just do it all together.
Would you like to make that motion?
No, absolutely not.
Yes, Matt?
So
I'd back your.
recognizing, I think, what Clinton brought up, and I think this is something that we need to be cognizant of. Staff has already done a good job during high temperature, low moisture parts of the year of banning, a temporary ban in most natural areas, which I think is still ignored. It was banned at the time that the one started right before the eclipse. It's a and Jim, I apologize, I didn't hear what you were discussing, but I've heard the recommendation sort of be similar to what you said, parking lots that are paved or the public right of way only, which would basically mean Claggett, Keizer Rapids. Those are the only two that I know that have dedicated parking, correct? I mean, Bob Newton, you can park near it, right?
I think Palmacia has a paved parking lot.
So does Willamette, Wallace House. It's got, but it's far. It's away from the park.
That's right, yeah.
So
That's even better.
Well, but
absolutely,
it's one of those deals where,
perfect in that case.
Again, I didn't vote for the original ban because it's a responsibility and civil liberties issue. I kind of, in the dedicated one, I did vote in favor of that, hoping that maybe there would be a plan that came out of it. But I mean, it sounds like we can't even agree among ourselves. I like Scott's idea of maybe taking a look at each individual park, but then you have to factor in wind and how close to somebody's house and extra.
And that becomes confusing to the public. They go, oh, is this a park we can smoke in?
And again, it boils down to enforcement. So, okay, great. Somebody's smoking where they're not supposed to be smoking. What are you going to do about it?
I mean, I guess the quandary that I find myself in is you have Salem, Marion County, and I don't even know what other municipalities do. I know Woodburn, you can't, just from going up there coaching softball, you can't smoke in those parks. And I just wonder why, and I know civil liberties, but, people who don't smoke, where it bothers, they have civil liberties too. And, their choice is to leave the park, where a person who smokes can get in the car and roll the windows up or or whatever. Smokers are a definite minority. So we know that more people would rather there wasn't smoking in the parks than is, I would assume. But with the fire damage that can be caused and everything else, I think we just ban it, but and be like everybody else, and it's not confusing. I mean, if you have to smoke that bad, don't go to the park, or go down the street. I mean, like I say, people that don't smoke and it bothers have civil liberties too, but we're not protecting them.
One more thing. So I spend my time walking my dog all over every park in this town. And every park, including the Salem parks, has a ban on, those parks have a ban on smoking in Salem parks. People smoke all the time. It's an unenforceable rule. And it reverts back to people being polite. Same with walking through the park today. My dog did his business. I cleaned it up. There was another pile sitting next to it. People have to take it on themselves to do what's right.
So did you clean the other pile up next to it?
Yes.
I thought too.
And for whatever reason, it's way gross when it's not your dog. But anyway, that being said, and right now, super cold, which I know is gross, but it's weirder than warm. But yeah, it's no different. So I'm walking through Riverfront Park, and there's a guy smoking right there. And there, cops ride their bikes through there all the time. Well, not today, they didn't, obviously, but it's just, to me, it seems, even if there is a rule, I'm not going to tell somebody, I might remind them if they're, I don't know how even if I would do that. It doesn't bother me, first of all, that much. I don't like it, I don't smoke, but I don't know how you enforce that kind of rule. I don't know how it's enforceable.
Why don't we ask Robert? Robert,
Got to fee money, hire a cop to do it?
well, I know that you're not going to call the police and have somebody arrested, but I mean, your staff, and you're actually going to have a staff, that's kind of nice. Is it going to bother them to remind somebody there's no smoking?
Well, I'm going to compare this to put your dog on a leash.
Oh, you're going to go there with me.
I just
aren't you?
went there.
Okay.
And it's extremely hard to enforce. Some people see me coming and they put their dog on a leash, and some people see me coming and they're wanting the confrontation. And they know exactly what to say to basically create a very bad situation. And I can see this going the same route as the leash law, in that we're not police officers, they don't respect us, and it's really not worth calling 911 over.
No. Not unless it was a fire hazard.
So it kind of goes back to what Scott was saying. They need to take it upon themselves to follow the rules. Otherwise, it's extremely hard to enforce.
Okay, let me ask you,
Extremely hard.
let me ask you this. If there wasn't a leash law, how many people would let their dogs run loose?
Let me speak to that. I got my own dog, and I let him off leash whenever I can. But when he's around other dogs or other people that I don't know, and I go to Keizer Rapids all the time, I know tons of people there. Paul, the Air Force guy, gives my dog a treat all the time. I know these people, and when I see people I don't know, or they're alone, or I put my dog on a leash immediately. I'm not one of those that I'm going to have a confrontation with somebody. When I see a policeman sitting in the parking lot, I don't put my dog on a leash because he's got better things to do, and my dog's 5 feet, 10 feet from me. The people who, I've never had a problem with anybody and a dog not on leash with my dog. If I put my dog on a leash, they always put their dog on a leash. We read each other. I'm not saying that doesn't happen the other way around, but it's just one of those things that I'm liking it to being a smoker. If I'm walking through there and my dog's off leash and there's somebody coming, if I'm smoking cigarettes, there's somebody coming, like my parents did, they put it out. They didn't smoke a cigarette while I was in the car with them, that kind of stuff. So I would hope that these kind of things would build momentum to do the right thing, so.
Yes, Clint?
So, Robert, in the summertime, July, August, you guys post no smoking, no fire, no. You post no fires. Is that what the sign says, or is
It's
it?
no smoking and no fires because of fire danger.
Okay, so the confusion that somebody was bringing up before, we go through this all the time because it gets so hot in the summertime that you post that out there for people not to do that. So
For fire danger.
Yeah, just for a fact. So I was just kind of curious on that. Also, at the Keizer Little League Park, they don't allow smoking in that park at all.
No, they haven't.
Because of
ever-
Little
they
League
never
rule.
have. And there's no dogs allowed there.
They fight the dogs pretty,
I know, but there are no dogs.
but there's no dogs either.
Very disappointing.
Okay.
This is a subject that's kind of serious for me because I have asthma and I do not like smoking at all. It affects me badly. But I am also against the government telling people what to do. So even though smoking does bother me, I say, don't put a sign up. It's not going to make any difference anyway, and all it's going to do is give them more trouble, and it's going to give other people the right to call the police and bother the police about something that is very minor. I don't like smoking. I really, really don't. I would love it if everybody stopped smoking, but it's a free country, so they can do what they want. I think that the fire thing is taken care of every year. So I personally don't think that we should be putting up signs. I think it's a waste of time, and I think it's a waste of money.
Yes, Matt?
So, I think this has been a good discussion. I think it's either all or nothing. I tend to agree with Dylan on that a little bit. You know, the bad part is we're talking about the 1% of people that aren't grown enough to say, oh man, sorry, yeah, we'll move. Or the other 99% that they're too afraid to say, you know, gosh, your smoking either bothers me because you're 5 feet away from the playground, or they don't walk away. You know, I'm in the camp, I don't like smoking. You know, but it's pretty clear that, you know, this weekend was a really good indicator of just how much of a lack of respect and responsibility I think people are choosing to show. I'm standing down at the south end of River Road, and there was 2 individuals that lit a joint 5 feet from one of our cops and said, it's legal, what are you gonna do about it?
It's not legal to do that.
I know that. And, you know, not to mention the fact that there was just a ton of trash all over River Road after the parade. You know, it's disappointing, but, you know, we're talking about a very small percentage of people. I agree 100% with Scott that those people that have the respect are going to, you know, abide to somebody's wishes. And the people that aren't, they're not going to care regardless of how many signs you put up. You could put a police officer down there and they're going to still say, what are you going to do about it? So I'm in the camp with Dylan. It's all or nothing to some degree. But again, it's one of those things where I agree with Kat. We can't do anything about it, and it's just one more thing that we have to write an ordinance on and take staff time when there are, in my opinion, far more important things that we need to be working on right now.
Let-
Yes, Jim.
Why, well, let me make a suggestion. Why don't we, my suggestion would be to ban smoking in parks July through September. It's a fire hazard, whatever. I mean, you do it at Keizer Rapids,
Do it at multiple parks.
so why not just do that? And,
Where we are.
no, we don't do them in all of them, so it tends to be confusing to people, I think. I mean, I can't tell you, other than Keizer Rapids and Keizer Little League, what parks you can't smoke in August. Don't know. But if we did that, that's when the parks are used most. It's a fire hazard. There's a reason to do it. And the rest of the year, just let people do what they want to do, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, Matt.
I think if we're gonna go that route, we just let staff make the determination and they post that when it's appropriate.
But it's a council decision.
Well, I don't think so. I think
Yeah, it is.
The public works director can make that decision, who is the person who tells me to go put the signs up
right.
because
Well-
of fire danger.
But if we did it across the board for all parks, July 1st through September 30th,
Is that the reason that this was brought up?
no, but that is a,
You're talking about peak usage.
yeah, well, but it's also a good reason as far as fire. And that way, it's not confusing to, you get somebody that, you know, they're at Keizer Rapids, oh, I can't smoke here. Or they've been in another park and they come to Keizer Rapids and they don't see the sign and they think, oh, well, I didn't know I couldn't smoke at this park. You just do all parks, July 1st through September 30th, no smoking.
Is that a motion?
I'll make that motion. And if I can get a second, at least I've improved.
So we can discuss it. I'll make a second.
It's been moved and second that we ban smoking in all parks July to September. Any further discussion?
I have a question.
Okay.
How many parks, what are the parks that you do this, that period of time?
I'm not going to sit here and list all the parks, but it's basically any park with like a natural area, forested area, something that, you know, a fire could potentially get out of control
Like
quickly.
Bear Park would probably be one.
Unirrigated natural areas. Bear, absolutely, Bear Park, yeah.
Wallace House.
Yep.
Yep,
Anything with a forested area,
okay.
not unirrigated turf.
Yes, Dylan.
I have two things. First thing is, I think it should be an all or nothing type scenario. Either we ban smoking in the parks or we don't. My second thing is that I've just got a question. Do we fine people, the people who've started fires? Have we ever, what's the breakdown on like, do we ever give out tickets for people breaking that smoking rule? Do we ever give out tickets for people having actually started fires? Like, what's going on there? Do we know?
You'd have to 100% prove who did it, and that is extremely hard. We basically know who started the fire down at Keizer Rapids this last summer, but nobody saw him do it. Therefore, you can't completely place blame because there's nothing proving he did it other than he was in the area. So no ticket was issued. Nothing was issued.
And nothing. I mean, have we ever issued anything?
Not that I know of.
What about just smoking, like during the ban, like in the summer?
Not that I know of.
Okay, I'm just curious.
So there's no tickets, no citations, nobody drug into the cops' shop to do, so it's pretty much a useless ban, is that what you're telling me? I think
that's
when
putting
it's
words in
actually
his
because
mouth.
of fire danger, they'll actually try to do it, but just to have an ordinance, because we've had wet summers that really didn't make much of a difference. I'm not sure that a ban in that time span would be any more enforceable or have any more effect than a total ban at any time.
Yeah.
Yes, Matt?
I agree with Dylan. I think it's either all or nothing. Negative. We have a motion on the table right now.
Yes, we do. Is there any further discussion? All right, so we have a motion on the floor to ban smoking from when, July 1st to September 30th? Is that right, Jim?
No, it was July, to August 30th, wasn't it?
No,
No,
through September, July
September
30th.
30th.
September, okay, thank you.
September 30th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
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 Okay, Mr.
Motion
Chair,
fails.
I'd like to make a motion that we ban smoking in all parks, 365.
There's a motion on the floor to ban smoking in Keizer parks. Is there a second? Motion fails for lack of a second.
Well, my wife likes them.
I'm so sorry.
we don't have an answer for the city council.
I mean, that kind of, we do, and there's, no ban.
Do we need a motion that there's no ban?
No, we
No, that's the
Or
way
we
it is
just-
now.
we just
It
don't.
died on the.
How about no recommendation to the city council?
Yeah.
Let them worry about it.
Sounds like a great idea.
I'll explain it, and I have all your names. I will bring that up.
Be there if you want me to.
So I would like, if anyone is impassioned, is this okay, Chair?
Yes,
Okay.
go ahead.
I would like to know, my main thing about the whole, like, well, Marion County has banned it, and Salem has banned it, and Portland has banned it, and Woodburn has banned it, is that that's a dumb reason to do anything, is to just ban it, to do anything because everyone else is doing it, the old jump off a bridge thing, which is a terrible analogy, I know, but like, why have they banned it? No one's ever come to me and said, well, we've done some research, and it turns out that this improves the lives of the people around them by this much. Many less people have cancer because of it. Like, nobody's ever given me, like, a real reason, and I haven't done it because I don't care. But
Okay,
if
here's what I'm gonna
somebody
do for
came to
you.
me,
Dylan, this is what I'm gonna do for
Yeah.
you. I'm gonna call Marion County. I'll either talk to Janet or somebody.
Janet is the one that wanted this, by the way.
Right, okay, I'll talk to Janet. And I will call City of Salem and find out why they did it and what their success is.
I can
And I will
connect-
come back and I will bring this up again
Yeah,
in
great.
January.
I'm significantly more likely
Okay.
to vote for something if I have real reasons.
All right, and I won't
Just-
make
yeah.
stuff up. I will give you
That's
their
not
exact
cool. I need
answers.
some sources.
You will get them.
Okay.
From my
80% will
experience
say
with Marion County bans, because I work for Marion County, that it doesn't work. I still see cigarette butts in our parking lot from visitors, and all the employees, they just go out to the
Well, it's
the
against a
road,
lot of drink and drive, but people still do it.
And they also
So, I
ban
mean, people are gonna do it
vaping, so
anyway.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a lame attempt at some kind of health thing. And
I-
it's really
I'm
not
not
gonna
talking
work at
health,
all.
I'm talking garbage, and I'm talking
Well, we
just
never-
bothering other people. But I will get some better information, and maybe
sorry.
I'll find out that they don't think it works that well. And if that's the case, I will report that.
Good.
Great, thank you.
So we'll
yeah.
make sure Jim is on the agenda for next month.
But you put a deadline on him. All right.
Yes,
I
we
like
did.
that.
Next month.
Well,
Tonight's my wedding anniversary, now 0 for 3.
Well, you're 0 for 2.
I'm sorry.
Oh, they're getting a second.
I'm sorry.
Might as well go for it.
No, that's true. At least I-
I opened a Pandora's box that I maybe should not have done. but-
It's
So,
Christmas, go
There's
for it.
there's speculation, Jim, you'll be 0 for 4 when you get home tonight.
No, I took her to dinner and gave her a gift last night, and she
Yes,
was-
but a new vacuum cleaner does not count.
No, nor fishing pole.
That was a really bad pun, Matt.
I know. That was the whole point.
All right. Going on to hopefully more constructive things than the last conversation.
I want to put it, I think it's important, you know, we did have somebody that cares a lot about the parks come and have a conversation with us, and I'm a little disappointed that we're punting on this again. I'm interested to see what Jim brings back, but Daryl has been somebody that's given decades to the city of Keizer, and is just asking and asking us to do our jobs and basically come up with a recommendation for his wife who suffers from asthma and stuff. I'm hoping, Jim, that you can come up with something solid that maybe will convince this group to not continue to punt this conversation down the road. Again, I'm not an advocate for just banning something for the sake of having a ban, but and I agree with Dylan. Don't just follow the crowd because that's what everybody else is doing. It doesn't get us anywhere. But I just want to take it. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge Daryl's time and effort and willingness to come down, have this conversation multiple times, and kind of get beat up by us a little bit. So.
Well, in his case, they would just go out to the right-of-way by the gate and smoke right next to his house. So I don't see,
No, I'm not disagreeing
can't
with you,
ban
but
smoking in the public right-of-way.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
So I'm not sure what we could do for him.
Maybe it's ban smoking on all city property. I don't know.
Citywide ban.
But that doesn't take in roadways because technically they're just an easement.
Great, then Marion County can do it with the roadways.
No, they don't.
Can you smoke on this property
Yes.
outside?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's like within 10 feet or something of the
Can't be
building.
within-
And
30 now, isn't it?
Can't be within a certain distance of the building.
that's the sign we need. You can't smoke within X amount of feet of kids or people playing.
Oh boy.
Yeah, they do tell, stay away.
Can I see your ID so I know how old you are to see if I can have a cigarette?
I'm totally being facetious, by the way. So, but again, just recognizing Daryl's time and effort, and
I understand that, and I sympathize with them, but I don't, if we ban it in Sunset Park, it's just gonna go out into the public right-of-way. And,
Except the wind blows the other way. Generally, it blows from the west. So it's blowing into his, to the north, actually from the northwest a lot, and so it is blowing into his property.
actually, in the evening, it comes from the south. Yes?
As a person that has asthma, it doesn't matter which way the wind's blowing. I can smell it. It doesn't matter.
I will come up with some information.
I'm excited. I look forward to it. I really do.
science, Jim.
All right, let's go on to something more constructive.
Jeez.
Mr. Johnson, would you like to enlighten us on your, whatever you want to enlighten us on?
All right. Like Matt was saying earlier, we've been working on getting a lot of project costs put together. Excited to start plucking away at this list. And the first thing that we're going to be doing is replacing the play structure at Meadows. And Bill and I had the privilege, this is about 2 weeks ago actually, from tonight, to meet with the neighbors of the Meadows neighborhood and have that discussion with them of what do they want to see in the Meadows Park for a playground. And it was great, open floor conversation. Turnout was pretty well. A lot of good ideas thrown around. And we compiled a list about, I'd say there's 30 items on this list that people suggested they wanted to see. And there was a lot of repeat items, which is really good because obviously those are going to be big ticket items that we're looking to put in to this playground. We had some designs that were already rough drafted going into the meeting that they were able to look at just basically for ideas of, these are things that a lot of playgrounds have, and, do you see any changes you want to make or any additions? Basically, right now, what we're looking to do is we want to provide a playground for multiple ages. There's kind of a 2 to 5 category and then a 5 to 12 category, and you kind of build one or the other. It's kind of challenging to build one structure that provides for all ages. So our plan right now is to kind of build 2 structures, one small for 2 to 5s, pretty simple, and one larger for the 5 to 12s. That neighborhood around there is pretty well known for a good solid neighborhood to raise a family in, and there's kids of all ages. that will be using that park. We did hear by a lot of the neighbors that they don't use the park anymore because the playground is deteriorated to that point that they just choose not to go to it. But if they had a good playground, they would absolutely be there in a heartbeat, and I'm happy to hear that. Part of that project is going to be replacing the pathway that goes through the park because it, for those that don't know, Meadows Park, of all of our parks in Keizer, tends to get kind of some mogully, sinkhole, weird shifts of soil, if you will, and that pathway is just doing this.
Isn't that because there were so many trees that were there before?
That is one of the reasons, yes. I've spoke with many of the neighbors actually, even at this meeting, about springs in that area, and because I've experienced some water that just shows up out of nowhere and it moves around from year to year, and some of the neighbors confirmed with me that their backyards have the same issues. And so I think it's multiple things. It's rotting tree roots. It's water that decides to show up whenever it wants and say hello. And just to kind of inform you as we move along with this process, one of my goals is to, when we go to remove the existing playground that's there, we're going to scrape off the top layer of wood chips. I plan on using those, keeping them on site for weed barrier around a lot of the tree circles. And then when we get down to the dirt layer that we need to remove, we're going to also keep that on site and help use that to fill in the low areas that have developed in the park. So we're kind of going to be tackling a couple different projects at once. One is going to be, replace the play structure. Number two is going to be kind of do a little bit of a turf rehab to the park and do some infill work. So, but we're all using the materials that we have on site, and it'll save costs. We won't have to truck it away. Access to that park for dump trucks is going to be kind of tight. There's only basically one way in, one way out, and with the soil conditions in the winter and spring, it's going to be extremely challenging to get dump trucks in and out of that park. So the more we can keep on site and move around with the small tractor, the better.
It'd probably be hard on the sprinkling system too.
Absolutely. Yep. So it was a great conversation. It's a conversation I've wanted to have for a long time working here. And it was just one of many great conversations to come from this list that we've created. And can't speak highly enough of you guys getting us to that point to have that conversation. It was fantastic. So thank you. And I think Matt kind of got wind of this, but legal is going to be creating a draft of new park rules and looking at changing our current set of rules. That's going to be coming to you guys sometime this winter, just kind of a little heads up of something to be kind of thinking about in your mind. Don't worry until the information's in front of you. You don't have to proceed with anything, but that's something that we want to look at and try to get up to speed this year is those park rules. So once we get that information, I'll make sure you all get that and we can kind of have that conversation.
Is Shannon going to do any major changes? I mean, that you know of that would surprise us?
I have
Like
not.
no smoking?
No, not like that. Mostly just to get us up to par of where we're at currently, to make sure that everything is,
The park hours aren't going to change, anything like that?
So, Mr. Chair, one of the discussions on that was right now, most people that use the boat ramp are not doing it during park hours, depending on the time of year, because they're going down when it's still dark or retrieving their boats after it's dark. And so that's one of the considerations, as well as a few others. And I had a brief conversation with Robert and Bill. Just they said it was coming, but that was one thing that came to mind for me was fishermen going out early or
Duck hunters.
or duck hunters. Yeah, exactly. So it largely, I mean, this is probably a housekeeping type thing where we just, as a board, look at it and make changes where we recommend and get it back to staff and council for finalization.
Exactly. Yep.
And I've done a lot of these. A lot.
That's it.
Thank you, Robert. Any other business? Then we're going to stand adjourned at 6:50.